bronze shields locked together like the scales of a serpent, a living wall that glimmered under the rising sun of Marathon. Spears jutted outward, trembling as hands clenched tight upon their ash shafts. The Athenians stood barefoot on their own soil, their hearts pounding not only with fear, but with the desperate resolve of men who knew their wives and children watched from behind the hills. Before them stretched the Persian host, endless banners of crimson and gold snapping in the wind, the metallic hiss of drawn bows carrying across the plain. The clash was inevitable. Neither side would step back, for between them hung the survival of Greece itself. The first collision was thunder. Persian arrows rained down like black hail, rattling upon bronze helmets and thudding into shields. The Athenians crouched low, advanced at a run, their sandals slapping against dry earth, their voices lost in the roar of charging men. Spears thrust forward, piercing lamellar armor, while scimitars curved in silver arcs, biting into flesh. The air was a frenzy of iron and screams, and the dust of Marathon rose like a choking fog around them. Men fell, trampled underfoot, shields splintered, blood streaked the soil until the ground itself seemed to breathe red. The Athenians pressed with ferocity, driving their wedge deep into the Persian center. But the flanks buckled, the Persians curling inward like a tide seeking to drown them. Panic rippled through the line. Some shields faltered, and in that moment, the war became a storm. Spears shattered, swords were torn from hands, and men grappled with bare fists and teeth, desperate to survive. The heat of battle was suffocating, the clash of bronze upon bronze endless. Yet within this chaos, the Athenians' courage did not fracture. They bent, but did not break, their wall of shields reforming again and again, rising each time the Persians pressed harder. Then, as the sun reached its cruel height, a second calamity struck. A wind from the east swept over the plain, lashing sand and dust into the eyes of the Greeks. The Persians, emboldened by the storm, surged with renewed fury. Chariots thundered forward, wheels carving grooves into the earth, horses foaming as they crashed against the Athenian line. Men were thrown, trampled, dragged into the dust by whips of leather and steel. Hunger and thirst gnawed at the Greeks. Their provisions had run thin after days of waiting for this moment, and now the taste of survival was bitter in their mouths. Many staggered, lips cracked, their sweat blending with blood as if their very bodies were dissolving into the war itself. And yet, in this crucible of suffering, courage sharpened like iron in flame. The Athenians feigned retreat, luring the Persians deeper, until suddenly the line folded inward. Spears thrust from both flanks, enclosing the invaders in a trap of their own making. The plain of Marathon shook with cries of despair as Persians fell in droves, pressed into one another, crushed by their own weight as the Athenians closed around them. The sea lay behind the Persians, but no ships could save them. Panic drove many into the waves, where armor dragged them down to a merciless end. The climax was survival not only of flesh, but of spirit. Men who had fought without food for days now stumbled over corpses, their stomachs hollow, their bodies trembling. Yet when the last Persian fell, and the plain lay silent, but for the moan of the wind, the Athenians still stood. Bloodied, scarred, but alive. Shields dented, spears broken, they turned their eyes toward the hills where their families waited. Smoke from the Persian ships curled black on the horizon, drifting away like the dying breath of a beast. The Athenians gathered the dead, laying their brothers in the earth of their homeland. And then, at dusk, when the sky burned with the color of victory, they sat together upon the scarred soil. Bread was broken, wine was shared from clay jars passed from hand to hand. Laughter, ragged, weary, but alive, rose among them, a song of survival after the storm. The war had demanded everything: blood, hunger, and courage. But on that plain, beneath the quieting sky, the Athenians had won not only a battle, but the right to live, to laugh, to hold their land as their own. The legend of Marathon would echo for centuries, but in that moment, it was not legend. It was the simple truth of men who had endured, who had stood when survival itself seemed impossible, and who found, in the ashes of war, the strength to rise again together.